Hi there. In this video, we'll be covering how to self-publish a book and make money. You could generate six-figure revenue from writing a book, but you need to follow the right steps. By the end of this video, you will learn how to set your book apart and the importance of having other things to offer in addition to your book. And stay tuned until the end of the video for a free opportunity I really think you're going to enjoy. Let's dive in. When thinking about writing a book, you really have to do your homework. It really requires you to dig deep and think about all the other books in the space. What has already been written? What are people interested in reading about? What's a message that you can share that is going to resonate with people? You should either be an expert on this topic or do the research necessary to become an expert on this topic. So either you have the personal experience or you gain the personal experience. But either way, it's so important to think about why this book should exist, what sets it apart, why people need to read it, what they're going to learn from it, and how they're going to carry this forward with them in their life. Because if you can't answer those things very clearly and succinctly, it's likely that your book is never going to be able to resonate or connect with the right audience or stand apart from other books. You don't want to spend years and years working on a book and find that it's exactly the same as this other popular book. Because if you do, people are going to read it and say, I've already read this book before. I don't need to read this. This is not worth reading. Don't waste your time. It gets downvoted in Amazon, and the next thing you know, no one's even finding it. So it really requires you to do your homework, to think about the kinds of messages that you can share that are going to resonate with readers, the kind of books that readers are going to care about, and filling that space that isn't being filled right now. So it's one thing to figure out what the message is and figure out how your book is different, but it really needs to stand apart and be unique. What is your uniqueness? What are you bringing to this to make it different? What are your approaches? What are your patterns? What are your voices? What about you stands out? What about your message stands out? Is it a saying of yours? Is it something that you bring to the table? Is it some specific experience? When people pick up this book, they should really be connected to it from the get-go, from the title, from the cover. They really need to be able to connect to it, which means you need to bring yourself and your uniqueness to the story. Your uniqueness is going to help set this book apart. So it's not just about doing the homework. It's about bringing your uniqueness, bringing your vulnerability, bringing your struggles and ups and downs into this book, and using that as fuel to really find a message that's going to resonate. The third step is to work with professionals, and there's a range of professionals that we can talk about here. A lot of times when you go to the bookstore and pick up a book by a celebrity or a thought leader, I like to page to the acknowledgments because it will tell you often who they worked with when they wrote the book. And it should give you a sense of understanding when you see all the names listed. Some of these people are in the front, some of these people are behind the scenes. They got help along the way. And you're going to need help along the way too, in some capacity. Some people who write a book will work with a book ghostwriter or a writing coach to help them during the writing process. I've worked as a book ghostwriter for the past 6 years. I've helped 30 different authors finish their books. And it's such an empowering process to be able to help them bring out their story. As a book ghostwriter, I'm the story expert. The authors I work with are thought leader experts. And we bring that thought leader expertise and the story expertise together and create something different and unique and special. Writing coach is similar to a book ghostwriter, but where a book ghostwriter will actually handle the writing themselves, a writing coach will work with an author to give them guidance and tips, and then the author does the writing themselves. But either way, there's professionals, there's really good insight coming into this. Book writing is a scary process, and it can be an overwhelming process, even when you've done it a couple times. There's a lot of hoops to jump through. What paths to publication do you want to follow? How do you want to approach this and that and this and that? There's so many different things that are outside of your areas of expertise. And that's one of the big reasons why people want to work with me, is because I can help to simplify this and make this easier to understand and let them know what to expect. But after the writing process comes in, there's other professionals that come into play too. Regardless of the publishing path that you follow, you want to work with professional editors to edit the book and challenge it and make it better. You want to spend the time to do it right. I've seen books that jump ahead, that want to, just cut corners on the production process. And the final result isn't what they want it to be, and the final result doesn't actually accomplish their goals. Think about all the books at Amazon, or think about all the books in the bookstore. There's got to be a reason why someone wants to pick up that book and read it. There's got to be something drawing them in, whether it's the layout, whether it's the design, whether it's the title, whether it's the topic. And then once they pick up the book, you want them to keep reading. You have to give them a reason to keep reading. You want to give them as strong a message as possible. Think about a Netflix show you put on at night and you start watching it. How long do you stick with it if it's not that good? 5 minutes, 10 minutes? We've all just bailed on the show or movie when you said, I don't really like this. This isn't very good. A book is even more difficult than that to keep a reader's attention, because a book takes time. A book takes a lot of time. This isn't mindless sitting there watching on the screen. This is actively reading, or listening to an audiobook. You really need to be invested in it, and you need to care about the message. And if the reader doesn't care about the message, they're not going to keep going. So then they're not going to get all the high value content and the takeaways and the lessons that you have in this book. So you really need to get them in and keep them in. And that requires you to really, really figure this out. Because if you put out a book that's not that good, or could be sharper, or that doesn't outline what the reader's going to take away from it early in the book, they're liable to put it down and never come back to it. And now you've missed out. So, working with editors, working with designers, working with publicists or promoters or marketers, think about professionals. Think about working with people who've done this, who've had success in this space, and who can help you get to that next step. Because again, it's an overwhelming thing. Again, there's so many different variables that you haven't probably considered when writing a book. And again, working with professionals can make that dark, scary path a little bit easier to navigate. They can light the way a little bit and just make this simpler and more straightforward for you. The next step, and such an important step in writing a book and making money, is having a robust sales funnel attached to your book. The book sales by itself probably aren't going to be the answer for you. Most books don't sell more than 500 copies. Most books sell even fewer than that. A lot of books sell less than 100 copies. So if you're thinking about 100 book sales, that's not going to be that much money for you. However, if you can make sure that those 100 book sales turn into other opportunities, whether it's coaching services, whether it's courses, whether it's mentorship, whether it's something, taking the reader to that next step, getting them excited to work with you directly, can drive tons of revenue for your company, for yourself. I've worked with authors who've taken individual book sales and turned it into 5- and 6-figure revenue. I've worked with people who've, sold lots of copies and didn't have any other benefit from it and made a little bit of money. And I've worked with people who've sold 50, 100, 200 copies and made a lot of money. So it's really about maximizing the value and maximizing the opportunities. And that requires you to connect the dots, to think about the book as one piece of your offering. It's not just the be-all, end-all, and it's not just a book. The book is the conversation starter. The book is the beginning of a relationship. The book is something to get them excited to keep working with you and collaborating further and seeing the vision that you're laying out in this book. They want that for themselves. That's where revenue comes in. It's speaking engagements. So many of the authors I work with are interested in speaking engagements because when you do a speech, you can actually have sales, book sales, as part of the process, part of the revenue process from the speech. Part of the agreement that you reach could be every person who goes to this speech gets a copy of the book. Think about the message, think about the impact that you can have from being able to talk to these people directly, give them a copy of your book, and have them leave with that book. What's going to happen next? You really want to map out what that journey looks like, what you want it to be. Maybe it's them scheduling a meeting with you, so then you can figure out if they're a right fit to work with your company, to work with you directly. Whatever the case may be, you want to map out that journey and think about how your book fits in with your other sales goals and how it fits in with your sales funnel. Because if you can do that, you can really drive revenue. If you want to learn more about how to self-publish a book and make money, there's another video I think you should check out. I'll link to it on the screen. It's called Is Writing a Book Worth It? In that video, I cover how books can open new doors for you. Remember, a good book can change your life. I'm Dan Good. Thanks for watching.